uluslararası hukuku çiğneyerek
By disregarding international law and disregarding human rights, Israel continues to be a terrorist state, and nobody except us tells them to stop.
buna dur diyemiyor.
You can be certain that systematic oppression, massacre, and intent to commit genocide, which has been going on in Palestine since 1948, will not go unpunished.
All right, the Turkish Prime Minister. There's a NATO member for you. Joining us now is Dr. Richard Cravatts, and he's president of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, also author of a great book, Genocidal Liberalism, the University's Jihad Against Israel and Jews. Doctor, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. You wrote a great piece at American Thinker, The Academic Nazification of Israel. You know, and I just, it's just so right on target. It's quite an extensive piece. Talk about what is going on. I mean, there we saw the Turkish Prime Minister. Most of us know what's going on around the world, from heads of state and you know, and the people in the streets and then attacking the synagogues, especially in Muslim communities, but in the West. But talk about what's going on at our universities.
Well, as you can tell from the tenor of the speech you just played an excerpt from, there has been, almost since the beginning of the creation of Israel, a concerted effort and a campaign to delegitimize, demonize, and apply a double standard to the existence of Israel. And in the minds of those who wish to destroy the Jewish state, it's been part of the cognitive war against Israel to try to paint Israel as the worst perpetrator of human rights offenses and war crimes on earth. And in the universities, in the name of social justice, many student groups and faculty have taken it upon themselves to join this campaign in the war against Israel by painting Israel as the new Nazi.
The new Nazi.
As I mentioned in my article, this process is what my colleague Richard Landis, professor at Boston University, has called moral sadism. The idea that the Jewish state and Jews who live there, the actual victims, some of them, of the real Holocaust, are now being accused of becoming Nazis themselves, is not only a gross inversion of reality, but it's a sadistic and cruel way of painting Israelis because of their purported offenses against the poor, helpless, and long-suffering Palestinian victims.
No, absolutely. And of course, in fact, it was the Palestinians who have taken playbooks out of the Nazis' page when it comes to propaganda and other issues, and who way back supported the Nazis to a great extent. And of course, also the apartheid analogy. It's the Palestinians that want to kick out the Jews in their new Palestinian state and have it just be a Palestinian state. That sounds more like apartheid to me than anything Israel has ever done. You know, I'm interested also as how culpable you know, we as a government might be in our own administration currently. You know, the ICC recently announced that there were no charges going to be leveled against Israel for the Gaza war. And yet, when confronted on that, when told about that, the State Department spokesperson said to the AP reporter, we still believe, the U.S. Policy and belief is still that Israel could have and should have done more to protect civilians. So, I mean, that doesn't, it's not the equivalent of Nazi or apartheid or anything like that, but it certainly stirs the waters, doesn't it?
It does. And you may remember that the general from the Joint Chiefs of Staff got up and made a comment that the Israeli Defense Forces' behavior during the last Gaza incursion was highly laudable and represented such restraint that this general was going to be sending American soldiers to Israel to learn how not to kill innocent civilians and collateral damage. And the State Department spokesperson, Jen Psaki, as you might remember, immediately said, well, we think Israel could have done more, which was breathtaking in not giving Israel credit for something. So you're right, some of that diplomacy and some of the comments made by government officials help.
It feeds into it. Doctor, we're out of time. It feeds into it. I hope everybody reads your book and reads you at the American Thinker. Dr. Richard Cravatts, thank you very much. Up next, the Closing Bell Report.